It's now been about a week since the huge Cyberpunk 2077 event Night City Wire, and following that event we had a ton of gameplay previews from various outlets and influencers, and we really learned a lot about Night City and the experience that we will be getting this November. Right now though, a lot of individuals on the web, the Cyberpunk community, is sorting through all these previews and finding out a lot of new information and little features that we will see in the game. As we explored in my last video, we talked a lot about that. That was a very lengthy video, and I'm expecting this one to be probably about the same because there's still just so much. Now, I'm not going to waste any more time, but I will say if you do go on to enjoy this video, please consider hitting that like button, subscribing for more, and turning notifications on so you do not miss out on any new videos. If you want to further support my content, I'm on Patreon now. As always, links are down in the description below. But first, let's get to some news, and this is actually something that I don't know if it's unfortunate, but it was revealed another feature that was scrapped from Cyberpunk 2077, and that is wall running. Now, Max Pierce, a level designer on Cyberpunk 2077, told the outlet Game Reactor that wall running, that is something that we removed due to design reasons, but there's still going to be a lot of flexibility in how you move, that's for sure. Since we are on the subject of removed features, another one was confirmed coming from the German gaming website GameStar, in which CDPR's level designer Miles Toss confirmed that the subway system has been somewhat overhauled. And what that means is that it can no longer be used. Instead, all you can do is, I guess, go up to the subway entrances and you can quickly fast travel for free to whatever part of Night City that you want to get to. But some people have found this kind of disappointing because this was pretty big in marketing early on for the game. Now, during this podcast, the CDPR developer also confirmed that the techie playstyle has been scaled back. And what that means is, well, for one example, the Flathead, that spider bot that were introduced in the early footage that came in that E3 2018 gameplay demo, that has been removed as a skill or side companion because the Flathead was mainly supposed to be a hacking companion similar to your own net running skills, and it just did not work out. But it has been said that the Flathead will still have a role in the game, although for now it's still unclear. Now, I think a lot of people need to understand that CDPR, with how they've shown off this game with all of that gameplay back in 2018, they've been very, let's just say it's different. You don't see many companies being very open with showing that much footage and being as open about the development process of a huge AAA game like this. And because of that, we're seeing certain features that just they're not able to put into the game. Maybe it comes in future expansions, maybe modders included. This is what I said about vehicle customization the other day, but this is just part of the development process. Things just don't work out, and we're seeing it in real time with Cyberpunk 2077 right now. Now, with wall running no longer being a feature in Cyberpunk 2077, there is some curiosity and questions about some of the other aspects, because it was actually just about a week ago in which a German interview re-emerged. This was taking place, I believe, around E3 2019, but it went under the radar. But some people were excited about one specific feature that was mentioned. That was the ability to climb buildings. And this was again an interview with senior level designer Miles Tost, and he was asked by the interviewer, when we're talking about agility in skyscrapers, is V actually able to climb facades from the outside like Spider-Man or King Kong? And the CD Projekt Red developer said yes, V can climb up skyscrapers, and we try to connect this with a special context. For example, in a quest or side activity, but while climbing, you won't look like King Kong or Spider-Man, more like V. And this interviewer made a comparison to Mirror's Edge, in which the developer actually agreed with. They said the comparison is not that bad, and as V, you will be able to get in dizzying heights. So maybe we get to climb up to the Arasaka Towers, or maybe not, because this is a questionable feature right now, but personally myself, I really hope that this is still in the game. But there was one other interesting thing that came from this specific interview with Night City Life, and it was Miles Toss also touched upon the Cyberpunk 2077 world scale, highlighting how comparisons with the Witcher 3 world is difficult due to the increased movement and driving options V has. And this is what Miles specifically said. On the other hand, V is way faster, significantly more mobile, and has access to more driving possibilities than just, Roach. Roach is awesome, but, Roach is a horse still. That changes the scaling of the world. When I ride on Roach for 10 seconds, and that is totally different distance than when I'm driving straight forward for 10 seconds with a car. That is definitely palpable when we sit together with the quest designers and we want to make a drive-filling dialogue with Jackie. You have to expand things in the game accordingly. That is why it's hard for us when we are asked for the world size or comparison with The Witcher 3. It is already hard to compare because the metric is totally different. When you purely hypothetically place a a street from Cyberpunk into Novigrad, that street would be easily 2 blocks wide and a car has a totally different turning cycle than a horse. So next, let's move on to some huge details regarding how you're going to be upgrading your character and the overall skill tree in the game, because multiple previews have confirmed that this system, which was previewed in 2019, the deep dive video, has been vastly expanded and overhauled. So what it looks like now, we have no idea, but we know that there is a ton of new added options available for us. And remember, we're going to have to choose wisely because we only have so many points to invest in certain categories, which is also why it's going to put a great emphasis on replay value with this experience. Now, as you can see, we have reflexes, cool, intelligence, body, technical. Those are the main stats. And under a stat like reflexes, we have handguns, rifles, blades. Those are the skills. Within these skills, we have a bunch of different perks, and it's now been said that each of these skills has at least 20 different perks that we can invest points into. So yeah, a lot of customization and a lot of different ways we can go about making different types of builds for this game. Now, the interesting thing is that Grizz Gaming, another YouTuber who got to play 5 hours of Cyberpunk 2077, actually detailed some of the most expensive perks to date in the game. So the first one, we have Body, which the first skill is with Street Brawler, and the perk is called Gorilla. Killing foes increases critical hit by 60% for 10 seconds. Athletics, hard mother effort, armor and resistances increases by 20% for 10 seconds. Annihilation, and then the actual perk name is redacted. Dismembering foes reduces recoil by 50% for 6 seconds. Now going to the reflex main stat, we have handguns, and then again the perk is redacted. Land a critical hit and get an armor boost for 20 seconds. Rifles, the Punisher perk. Kill an enemy to nullify weapon sway and spread for 10 seconds. Blades, the Dragon Strike perk. Strong attacks consume stacked bleeding effects and deal 15% damage. The tech ability, craft, revamp, increase sale price of crafted items by 25%. Engineering, crazy science, increase tech weapon damage by 25%. To cool, stealth, toxicology, poison duration increased by 5 seconds. Cold blood, merciless. If cold blood active, critical chance plus 10% and critical damage plus 2%. And then finally to intelligence, that main stat, we have device hacking and the perk transmigration, increase breach time protocol by 25%. And the last one, target hacking, there's the perk master memory, increase memory regeneration speed by 25%. And these are just some of the many different perks that we're going to be able to invest points into and unlock, which there's just going to be so many different fun builds that will be made for Cyberpunk 2077. Now, in another interview that actually was conducted just days ago, this coming from Games Radar, they got to talk with CDPR senior quest designer Philip Weber, and among other things they talked about romance options and character creation. Weber had this to say about their philosophy and what their mission is with character creation in Cyberpunk 2077. For us, it basically is down to the global philosophy about how we make Cyberpunk, which is that we really want to give you as much freedom as possible for people to basically inhabit this character in Night City, full-on immersion, people. And part of it, of course, was to give you as much freedom in how you create your character, and how your character looks like, and how your character sounds like, and how your character acts. So I went into detail about character creation in my last video on Cyberpunk 2077, so I'm not really going to concentrate on that aspect right here, but as most of you already know, there is a lot of options with how you can design your character V, and it's definitely awesome that CDPR is giving us that freedom. But a big primary focus of this specific interview was actually on the romance options and just how romance works in Cyberpunk 2077. And Philip Weber gives us some very interesting details. So it starts off with this quote from him. He says, "The romance options are somewhat tailored, specifically when it comes to how characters refer to you. They do refer to you with male or female pronouns. It basically depends on the voice you choose. Characters will have different preferences, and we just try to basically give them many different ones. But for us, it comes back to story, and it comes back to character. We also want to make that an important part of romance." So that's an important factor. I mentioned this in my last video. There's a lot of speculation and theories about Judy Alvarez and the specific preferences that she has and who she's interested in. So that's something that will play out in Night City. Not everybody's going to be into male or female V. Now, moving along, this is something that Games Radar notes, but in order to get a chance at romancing anyone, you're going to need to get to know them first. And Philip Weber says, "We don't have a checklist for romance where you do these specific things to get the character to like you. We try to make this a more natural approach, where it's specifically things you say that we don't tell you. We don't raise a number or something. Specifically specific things you say might make a character like you first, and then maybe a romance can blossom, or maybe not. It's depending on if you click or not. All of this stuff, we try to keep it natural and in the background, so you as a player don't see the mechanics behind it, because these kinds of things, these kinds of relationships, they're not very mechanical in real life. So we also try to keep it like that in the game. When you make a choice, we don't tell you if it's a good choice or a bad choice. Something that, as an example, we did with The Witcher as well, is where we say, well, you know, the world is gray. Sometimes you might be able to do something that's a little bit nicer, but might have some negative consequences. Sometimes you might say something crass or something terrible, but maybe in the long run, that might actually get you a positive outcome, because you never know. There's the butterfly effect. Of course, it adds a challenge for our writers, because our choices are usually shorter versions of what then the rest of the conversation is going to be. So we have to be on the line between being clear with what you're going to say, but then still have an interesting conversation that's not going in a direction where your character knows it's something you don't want to do. So a very interesting take on how romance is going to work, and it's not like most, I guess, other games where you just have certain points that pop up on the side, giving you an indication of how you're doing with romance. It's natural, and how it worked in The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, I actually really did appreciate it, and I'm really happy to see that they're taking those lessons and bringing it to the dark future. But in some other huge news that actually just came the other day, it was the announcement by Game Informer their next issue, which is going to be on Cyberpunk 2077, and I believe the digital version is already online and available, but what we have here is actually the game cover, or the cover that's going to be on the specific magazine issue for the game. And here we see Male V working on some cyberware connected to his arm, looks like his phone's connected to it, and he's hanging around at a bar, and it just looks like a really cool shot. And it does say on the top that he is in the Haywood district, or the Valentino territory, so it makes sense that you'll see a lot of those gang members in a bar like this. But also at the bottom left hand corner, you actually see some binary code, and people of course have already translated this, and it's actually just a message from CDPR that says, "I love you, CD Projekt Red." And they've done this often with a lot of the artwork, in-game images, small little secret code that can be translated into sometimes really big mysteries and secrets, but at other times it's just like a fun little thank you message from CDPR. Very, very cool. And within this Game Informer issue, there's actually some new exclusive images that CDPR gave to them, and I thought we'd go over them very, very quickly. The first one here we actually have is from the Nomad Life Path, and it's when V enters into a garage and is trying to get this vehicle running so he can enter into Night City for the first time. And we obviously have like a little ordeal that eventually happens with the sheriff, but a very cool shot nonetheless. The next one we have is some combat going down. Not sure what life path this is associated with. I believe this is the Corpo, but I can't make out the gang member that V's attacking with the Mantis blades, but still a very cool shot, especially with the lighting, the red lighting in the background. And here in this next shot, there's not much really that I can say about this, because these are just Mox gang members, some of the ones that are stationed outside of Lizzie's bar, guarding and deciding who can come in and out. And here in the final image, this is another shot of Lizzie's bar, in which you can see some, I assume, Mox gang members just hanging around loitering, and then we also see that Quadra Turbo R vehicle, the one that we've seen very, very often that CDPR has shown off in a lot of the gameplay previews dating back to 2018. Additionally, on Chinese social media, this image was uploaded exclusively. It shows what appears to be an Arasaka executive confronting an NCPD officer Stints. We can see the executive's bodyguards in the background looking very, very intimidating. And this is actually coming from the Street Kid playthrough, in which V is trying to steal a rare car. And this officer, some people have said that he looks like Gontaro Dim from The Witcher 3, and I kind of do see that. And maybe he's just as evil as that character. Now, just a bit earlier on in this video, we went over an interview coming from GameStar with a CDPR developer, which confirmed that a feature had been removed, and that's the subway system. But there's actually more to this podcast that I quickly want to mention, some very interesting details. So let's start off with this. It's been said that not every activity will be marked on the map. CD Projekt Red has learned much from The Witcher 3 and will avoid pointless quest marker fiesta-like barrel markers Skellige in The Witcher 3. I guess that's the example they were making. You get more street cred by killing enemies with higher wanted levels, just a little side activity that you can do in the world. world, there will be little spots with visual storytelling, and an example that was given was that you'll find a body and a turret nearby. You can destroy the turret and find a notepad that tells the background story of this specific situation that you walked into. It's also been said that you cannot kill important quest NPCs, there's a confirmation there, and CDPR is said to be still working on level scaling. They want players to feel a sense of progression while obtaining a balance where you don't just want to one-hit everything in certain areas. Finally, we move to what I consider the main section of this video, and that is a compilation of just, I would say, over 100 gameplay details of Cyberpunk 2077, and a big shout out to Reddit users Avorius and Frost_Winter. I will have a link to these posts in the description down below, but there is one more shout out that I have to give, and that is to the Last Known Meal, another YouTuber who covers Cyberpunk 2077. He actually sent me on Discord a translated article and interview from the Polish gaming outlet Gry Online, and it just contains so much information and so much gameplay details on Cyberpunk 2077 that we are going to be going over. But again, links are down in the description below if you want to check out his channel and the Reddit post that we are about to be going over. But what I am going to show on the screen right now is the 20-minute gameplay demo. I'm not going to edit or put anything in front of it, so you can just watch it for yourself if you have not seen this footage yet. It shows the 3 different life paths: Nomad, Street Kid, and Corpo, just some gameplay associated with those life paths in the early part of the game. Nothing spoilerish, it's just, a better look at Cyberpunk 2077. I kind of wish that this had been released publicly, but this is what was sent to much of the press. Regardless, if you have not seen this gameplay footage in its entirety, well, here's your opportunity to see it now. So we are first going to start off with this Gry Online article and interview, just because it contains so much. But first, they mention how police works in the game, and it's the fact that police are not going to patrol every single area, as gangs will deal with you if you're stirring up some chaos in their territory. And it said that the system is very, very complex, and this interviewer, I guess, says as they understand, the late stage of the system is the Psycho Squad being called in, and they will kill you on sight, and it said that you have to really screw up for them to come after you. So the Psycho Squad, what we saw in that 2013 teaser trailer, they are in fact in the game. I mentioned that in my last video, and they are very, very dangerous. I guess that's like the equivalent to GTA 5 stars. There is said to be mini games in the game, but there's nothing, or they aren't planning something as, I guess, massive as Gwent. You will not be able to install every implant in the game at the same time, which is why replayability will be so important with this game. You'll have to decide what will be left of your humanity as implants integrate to your system that is installed into you. Pavel Sasko, the lead quest designer in the game, said, "We know how Windows works if we put too many things into it, and we can delete and swap them, of course." So that's the comparison he was making to a computer system. Expansions are said to be, well, they are being planned right now. Nothing to share yet from CD Projekt Red. As we went over in my last video, details will be shared before the launch of the game, and Pavel Sasko said that they are to be created and not in the focus for now. They're focusing on the main game first, of course. There will be information given when you'll be able to make some serious decisions in the game, like when you're reaching the end game, so it's very similar to how it works in The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, and this will give you an emphasis if you want to go explore more side missions before you take on some serious activities or a serious main quest line that's about to finish. You can decide to not install any implants except the operating system that is in your body. The rest is your choice, but it's said to be like living in New York without a phone. Blackest Lance was the name of the booster that was given to us from a Maelstrom gang member to smoke while buying a spider bot. So I guess that's a type of drug that's in Night City. They have a special weapon design team that spent countless hours designing and creating logic behind weapons. Every weapon has a story, it's in lore, it's different. Same with cars, even things like pizza is made to perfectly sit inside of the story created for the game. A lot of passion and hard work has gone into this game for the last 7 years. But to expand on the weapon details, Pavel Sasko explained, there's a company in the game called Budget Arms. It's basically a vending machine that you can buy weapons from. It's crappy and it's for a quick job. 100% different than Militech weapons, for example, which are very, very good. And there are said to be longer and more complex brain dances than what was shown in the recent gameplay. There are also quicker ones. It mostly depends on how you as a player can spot stuff fast enough. Writing quests for Geralt in the Witcher franchise and writing quests for V is a complete different experience. Something in a different scale, bigger and more complex, Pavel Sasko explains. Your life path or abilities will give you some more paths of the quests, dialogues, etc., some won't. The quests are made to make you feel like this version of the quest was made for your choices that you made before. CD Projekt Red right now are not sharing any details on PC requirements for the game. This is something that a lot of people have been asking. Pavel Sasko was asked about the Officer Stin's look, as some people have been pointing out that maybe it's based on Gontar O'Dim, and what Pavel Sasko explained, or his response was, you'll have to play the game to see. And we've already heard many mentions and even seen in some of the footage some Witcher Easter eggs, and I'm certain that we're going to see a lot more. The idea of a Ciri Easter egg was kind of shot down a couple of years back by the game director Adam Badowski, but hey, maybe times have changed, maybe this is something that they're holding secret, but I know a lot of people are hopeful that in some capacity we see Ciri, or maybe a Witcher character like Gontar O'Dim. There is car destruction systems to some degree, and you can crush other NPCs' cars. There is a wanted system similar to the one from Grand Theft Auto. Yes, you can drive over NPCs to get it, for example. In the gameplay demo, you could not drive through friendly NPCs like Jackie. There was one moment in the demo that players tested it, and the car just went through Jackie's model. Jackie was putting some boxes into the car's cargo, a bug for sure, and that's something that CDPR pointed out. In the demo, some parts of Night City seemed quite empty of NPCs, most likely because it was just a demo. Limited one, and this may be another bug, but also this game is still in development, and this build that previewers were playing on was likely one that came about a few months ago. You can break into any car from the street, but for some you need proper perks, like strength to take the person out or open the door. You can get text messages via your phone, yes there is one, from random fixers in the game. Also you send emails to them to complete/progress some quests. Your character's backstory affects the story, opens and closes some quests. It defines what you'll have access to and how the world reacts to you. One of the many inspirations for the story is Akira and Vampire the Masquerade's Bloodlines, which is a PC game, and the sequel's actually coming up very soon. Basically every quest you'll find in the game tells some part of the world story that you live in. They even design ketchup and mustard bottles to belong into the cyberpunk universe. Yes, that is what Pavel Sasko said himself. Witcher 3 was much easier to calculate how long it can be. Cyberpunk is almost impossible to do so. That is why they are not stating how much it'll take. For example, Pavel Sasko explained he saw people speedrun the Witcher 3 Wild Hunt in 2 hours plus, others played it for 25 hours, others 900 hours, so it is pointless to even try to calculate it, as it will be different depending on how you'll play. Now to our final set of details. After feedback from The Witcher 3's main story, the main story of Cyberpunk 2077 was developed in a way that it'll be filled with more content. The main goal is not to make the story longer, but better, as from this feedback, some parts of The Witcher 3 story was just a bit too long. It dragged on a little bit. So they're doing their best to not include that in the main story of Cyberpunk. Relationships between characters is made to be realistic, not bring me 10 coins and I'll sleep with you. It is meant to feel your choices, and these relations between characters is meant to mean something to a player. It is very complex compared to The Witcher, for example. You'll be able to push the relationship forward from friendly to hate, or best friends, or, some attraction. As a player, you are connected to the police system of some kind. You can scan other NPCs to check their transgressions. You see if they are wanted, for example. If you kill that character or knock them out, the police will take care of him or her, and you can get a reward for that. Now, moving along to these Reddit posts, the first one coming from Avorius. This is a compilation of a lot of impressions and gameplay details that were gave recently from journalists from their previews of the game, in which they got to play about 5 hours. The first one, movement is said to be a lot smoother than in The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. The player is nearly always in control of the camera, even during dialogue scenes. So let me stress that this is very, very impressive. In most games, once you walk up to a character, you're confined to that specific scene. Maybe you can turn the angle a little bit, look a little bit outside of the scene, but you're pretty much there, and you're stuck there until the cutscene's over, or you choose the right options with dialogue. Now, here with Cyberpunk 2077, this was something that Alana Pierce mentioned from her preview of the game. She actually says that, yeah, you can walk around, you can mess around, and the dialogue will still continue to go on. So this is actually a very interesting and impressive option and ability that we have in the game. And it said that there's only about 4 or 5 actual cutscenes that were confined, and we can't move around, which, yeah, extremely impressive, and I'm really interested to see how that plays out throughout the experience. And the game is said to be nothing like Grand Theft Auto, at least aesthetically and the structure. This is an RPG, and I'm going to keep putting an emphasis on that because I think there's a lot of casual gamers, a lot of people that are going to be entering into Cyberpunk 2077, and I think they really are going to be expecting Grand Theft Auto, but in the future, and that's not this. This is a story-focused experience with a big focus actually on the role-playing aspect with a lot of replayability. Now, you can get through the entire game without killing anyone, so if you want that pacifist playthrough, it's possible, but it has been said that you still will have to hurt people, but yeah, you don't have to actually kill anyone. The more you use a weapon, the more you can specialize in it. We actually see that in some of the gameplay that's probably been on the screen. You can see the handgun actually being upgraded in certain moments as you use it. If you look at I believe it's on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see very, very small, you can see you gaining XP with the handgun, so very interesting. It said that certain weapons, if you don't have experience with it, they won't perform to the best ability. It's also said that you can skip time to pass time for quests, how it is in most open world or really any game. 1 real-time hour in the game is the equivalent of 8 in-game hours. There is said to be no loading screens for fast travel, which is actually another very impressive feature because I really can't think of many games that have actually had this as a feature, because I remember all those moments playing Fallout or Skyrim and just sitting there at the loading screen after fast traveling, sitting there for minutes, and well, let's just say technology has come a long way. Now, other than the initial load into the game, there is said to be just 1 brief load when V sleeps, again very impressive. Combat, at least in one preview, they mentioned that it feels more like Destiny, and that's actually a very interesting comparison. The game for most previewers ran smoothly, but there of course were bugs present, as this also was probably a few months old of a build. Quests had a lot of optional tasks that changed the outcome. You don't feel like the center of the universe in the game. That's actually something that's very neat because a lot of games make you feel like the center of the universe. Characters weren't heard speaking any repeated lines of dialogue. That's actually very, very surprising. Your user interface is determined by what enhancements you have equipped and by your life path. Now, in my last video, we actually saw some of this. On the corporate life path, you could see like the Arasaka logo stamped up on the tops of the heads-up display, and it also said you were connected to Arasaka. And then I believe in another scene, maybe you'll see this in the gameplay, but you can actually see in the bottom right-hand corner some stocks going by, and I would assume that this is on the corporate life path, and it just kind of makes sense. There are said to be a lot of likable characters in the game. It's definitely less edgy than the previous demos. The side characters are said to be very interesting. The open world is stunning. Everyone gushes about the world design, atmosphere, and retro future, lived in look and feel of it. The game doles out a lot of interesting lore while being very subtle and casual with it. There is said to be no lore dumps given to the player. Everything is experienced or sought out by the player. And that's actually very cool because I don't know how many games where the exposition is just thrown at players, and it's very noticeable and it can take me out of the experience. But the fact that CDPR is going about this a little differently, at least with Cyberpunk 2077, that's very nice. The world is very well fleshed out and believable. Due to the changing allegiances of characters, you feel suspicious about every single character you meet. And again, this is a role-playing experience. Betrayal, that's part of the process, and hopefully we can investigate and find out certain details, lore, maybe understand some of these characters better to maybe figure out their personality a little better, to understand who they are and what they might do to our character V. XBDs or illegal brain dances are found on the black market or at certain night markets sold by seedy individuals, and I mentioned this in a previous podcast in which I talked Cyberpunk 2077 with a bunch of other creators. I just love the idea of brain dances. I know it's like Detroit Become Human or investigation or detective modes in most games like Batman Arkham Origins or something like that, but there's just so many opportunities to make brain dances a valuable feature, like watching a brain dance, finding a valuable car or valuable weapon. There's just so many opportunities to really expand upon this system. There is said to be a huge focus on verticality, and this is not something that's new. CDPR has really emphasized this in interviews and previews, because some people have been critical of the size of the world, and I think a lot of people just don't understand that a lot of these buildings have multiple floors and a lot of exploration that can be done, and that's something that we will see play out within Night City. There is fall damage, there are children in the game, but you of course cannot kill them. When selecting the corporal life path, you begin the game at the Arasaka Tower. When selecting Nomad, Kid, you begin in the Badlands, and when selecting Street Kid, you start at a bar in Night City. Some of that's probably been on the screen right now. When the tutorial ends, the game jumps about 6 months, and it starts where the E3 2018 gameplay demo begins, with a no future elevator. The trauma team will tase/shock you if you do not comply with their orders. In one of the previews, it was actually mentioned that somebody went forward and intervened with what the trauma team was doing, and they actually got shot. So don't mess around with the trauma team when they're trying to get their client out of a certain spot. Dialogue is said to be delivered very well, nothing B-movie-like or cheesy. There are animals, but very few of them. It is implied that they are all artificial. You cannot pilot flying vehicles. That's something that we've known for some time. There are some YouTube influencers in the game, both voice and face. That was something that I talked about in my last video. There is said to be a humorous talk show playing on a TV in V's apartment elevator. You can talk to everyone, even NPCs. You can get side missions from NPCs, but I will say the fact that you can talk to every NPC in the game, that doesn't mean too much because most of the time it's just one line of dialogue, and there's said to be lots of NPCs in the Watson area. The city feels alive. Paris, another YouTuber who talks Cyberpunk 2077, did not like the handling of the Quadra VTech. He said it was too sensitive. The devs said that they're still working on that. Misty and Jackie, two characters that we saw in that E3 2018 gameplay demo, they're said to be romantically inclined, and I'm just curious if there's any way that V can interfere in that relationship. Just a curiosity. The life path you choose has significant effects on your playthrough. Choices and characters are completely different at times throughout the game, depending on your selection. Yorinobu Arasaka, who's said to be like the guy who's commanding over Night City, has the Johnny Silverhand chip, and this is part of one of the first quests in the early parts of the game, is getting that chip and being introduced to this very famous character. Gun shops can offer you missions. The No-Tell Motel is actually in the game, where I'm sure a lot of the fun activities begin. There are so many choices and options that it feels overwhelming before you learn to take things in stride. And even a lot of the previewers mentioned that these 4 hours that they got to play with the game, they didn't feel like they even touched the surface of what Cyberpunk 2077 offers. During melee, you have an attack button, a dodge button, and a block button. If you time your block at the moment of impact, you will perform a counterattack. This applies to swords and knives as well. The music is said to be amazing, both the score and the music on the radio stations, and I believe all of the music on the radio stations has been handcrafted by CD Projekt Red. At the Game Awards in 2019, we saw various artists that will be associated with the radio station and the overall musical score for the game. I believe that includes A$AP Rocky, Grimes, and a lot of other artists. Character models are impressive, but nothing earth-shatteringly next level. The world feels alive, living and breathing. This is due to the atmosphere, NPC animations, chatter, and the lighting/textures. Most everything in the trailer was from the prologue of the game. I mentioned that in my last video. Blessing Adeo Jr., I apologize, I'm probably saying his name horribly wrong. He's the host at Kinda Funny Games, another journalist YouTube channel. He says he thinks the game might get delayed again. Ooh, don't scare me. Driving is said to feel great. For a lot of the previewers, they said it's slightly Grand Theft Auto-ish but weighty, so I guess that kind of sounds very similar to maybe Grand Theft Auto 4, which I actually did enjoy. There is said to be upwards of a dozen radio stations. There is a rock music station. You can hear live police reports throughout the radio. One previewer mentioned that Cyberpunk 2077 is Deus Ex, Mankind Divided, and Revolution on steroids, and as someone who loved both of those games, that's very awesome. Most players like the shooting mechanics. Vehicles all have unique interiors that'll separate these vehicles from one another. The game is very much an RPG where you actually have to roleplay as the character you want to play. Example is building a scrawny netrunner and having to talk your way out of fights due to your low physical constitution that isn't conducive for taking damage. You have to use your mind as a netrunner would. Grenades have dome-shaped area of effect displayed while aiming before you release them. Your perk skill levels cannot be higher than the corresponding attribute level. So for example, if your governing skill for stealth is 6, your stealth skill points cannot go above 6 unless you increase that governing attribute's number to 7 or higher. Street cred is not a morality system, it can only go up. There are some items in stores and from vendors that you can only buy if you are well-renowned in Night City. You can go in Grand Theft Auto style rampage stages, which is just you slaughtering people. You can add cybernetic enhancements to your circulatory system. None of the bugs experienced by any of the previewers were severe, and they should be fixed before launch. There's no official confirmation of a photo mode. Sound effects are said to be cinematic in quality. The game has a very expensive sound design. There's a very Japanese/Blade Runner style side street with electrical cables hanging above you between the buildings and rows of vendors and noodle bars. This was mentioned, I believe, in the PC game preview. You can watch commercials on TV. You still unfortunately cannot customize your apartment. Every building you enter is said to be insanely detailed. Auto aim can be toggled on and off. It was set to on for everyone's hands-on experience. You can steal cars, trucks, and motorcycles, even shooting the driver and then taking the vehicle, although again this depends on skill level. You can no longer select a wardrobe item off of a hanger from the closet in your apartment. That is done via the character equipment menu. You can see your clothes in the closet. Aside from the mantis blades, you can also get forearm missiles that pop out and then retract after you use them or at your command, like Iron Man. We saw that in the recent trailer. You can take enemy weapons and use them, and then after the tutorial section concludes, you're actually confined to Watson, and I believe that's that specific mission with Sandra Dorset in which you have to escort her to the trauma team and rescue her. Now moving to this next Reddit post, another one that compiled a lot of the gameplay details and impressions from previewers, this one coming from Frost_Winter. You can injure/dismember enemies and then leave them alive and presumably disarm them instead of killing them. The game has a sort of hidden morality system. The game will secretly keep track of how many good and bad choices that you have made, although this is unconfirmed for now. Any weapon in cyberware will be color customizable, which is pretty cool. One of the quests has 7 different outcomes. Companions by multiple previewers is said to be very useful and not only just in fights. You can shoot while driving whenever you feel like it. There was actually no closets in the demo. If you have no experience with a weapon, you are going to have trouble aiming and reloading it. A number of NPCs will be connected with the time and area, so assume that the Valentinos will be in the Haywood district, as that's their territory. NPCs can actually pee, and it's said to be very realistic. There's said to be stuff that can only be kept in certain temperatures, like a nanochip for example. Each attribute can be level to level 20. There's said to be at least 20 cyberware mod slots, at least 85 side quests, and just judging by CDPR's experience with side quests, especially in The Witcher 3, hopefully that indicates that we're going to have a lot of quality content. Because in a game like Assassin's Creed, no offense to Ubisoft, but a lot of these side quests feel like fetch quests, go there, pick that, and that's about it. But in The Witcher 3, there was just a lot of story, a lot of substance to these side quests, so I'm kind of expecting to see that once again. There's said to be at least 70 street stories, although this for now is unconfirmed. There are clothing stores in the game. There is a stamina bar for melee attacks, blocking, counterattacking, comboing, etc. Your animations will reflect your weapon skill, and they will improve as your skill does. Life paths impact how the story begins and how NPCs interact with you later on. And out of the last few details, this is actually on romance. You can actually have no body parts down there, if you know what I mean, although it's really unclear how this will work for now. There are indeed deep romance options as well as one-night stands, and the only known romance options for right now is Meredith Stout, which is a Militech agent. We saw that in the E3 2018 demo in which we're introduced to her, and of course Judy Alvarez. Anyway, again, this has been a long video. We just went over so much new Cyberpunk 2077 gameplay details that have been revealed, and as I always say, I will be covering everything else that comes out, so just expect that in the future. But let me know your thoughts on everything that we went over down the comment section below. But thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this video, or if you found any informative value, and make sure to follow my other social media accounts for updates on new videos. Links are always down the description below. I'm most active on Twitter, giving opinions on news that I do not always get into video form, so do make sure to follow me over there. Also check out my Discord for all sorts of discussion on games. And again, thank you for joining. Consider subscribing for more videos like this, and I'll see you later.